Hi, this is Kurt with Friendly DevOps, a channel dedicated to discussing Linux and DevOps related topics. Today we're going to be deploying ECS cluster with an EFS, an elastic file storage attached to your container image on AWS using CDKTF. Before I begin, I'm going to inform you in advance that I won't be doing the same type of deployment for Cloud Run. I'm not going to be setting up an NFS share. I had some problems trying to set that up and deploy that with on GCP with Cloud Run, and I'll just go over quite quickly those issues before I begin. In that NFS share, well, is quite expensive, so it is not a good choice for setting up a file storage on a container. It's literally the minimum available storage you have is 1 terabyte at $100 a month. But even then, I did try to set it up just for the sake of demonstration purposes. But there seems to be some issue on the back end where their permissions were all askew because I couldn't get the deployment to initiate properly unless I set up the folder path to a different folder path than the basic that I'll be showing in my current demonstration. So when I had came to a realization there was an issue with NFS, I decided to pivot and utilize the GCS bucket as a form of storage. Now I'm going to be utilizing Nextcloud for this demonstration, and the issue there is twofold. One is that to utilize GCS as a backend for this, all of the folders are going to be available to anyone with administrative access to those buckets to be able to go over. So that's essentially not a good thing for privacy and protecting one's data. The second issue is there appears to be some conflict between the permissions of the instance and what they're able to write into the bucket. And the only way to modify the permissions for the GCS bucket is to use gcloud, and it's not available with CDKTF. The interface isn't mature enough, and so I wasn't willing to alter my deployment and modify it trying to get gcloud to work. But essentially, from my experience with GCP, I would say that the systems that they have in place are not that mature yet, and there's a lot of issues that you're going to be facing. So I would recommend sticking with ECS with AWS for any of your container image deployments. If you're going to be moving over to GCP, I highly recommend sticking with Kubernetes. Google has designed Kubernetes, and I'm sure they're made it a robust experience using Kubernetes. But otherwise, GCP has some limitations when compared to AWS. So let's begin with the deployment. So here's the repository that we're going to be using to deploy this container to AWS ECS using an EFS storage. So we're going to be, again, needing an AWS account number, AWS role that we're going to be utilizing for the deployment. We're going to create a random string for DB user as well as a string for DB pass. We'll need to have the VPC ID, the bucket for this backend that we're going to be storing our state. We're going to have a subnet, 2 subnets, and then we're going to be utilizing the zone ID for the Route 53 that we deployed utilizing the LZ deployment from earlier. And the certificate ARN that you created with the AWS LZ deployment from earlier. Now we're going to deploy this by going to Actions, click Deployment Workflow, click Run Workflow, and then make sure Deploy, click on Run Workflow. Okay, now that our deployment is complete, let's go over to the ECS cluster. It'll take some time after your deployment for the task to start up. Okay, now our deployment has reached a steady state. This can take up to 10 minutes to deploy. We can now connect to the application through the URL that we set up using Route 53. Okay, we go to our hosted zone that we created in advance. Here is our new entry. Let's see. Okay. So now it's time for us to test the persistence of our application. All right, we're gonna upload a file. Let's see, let's start with this. Let's try have a couple reasonable sized files that we can upload rather quickly. Take a couple image files. All right, there we go. Now we're going to update the image of our application and then redeploy. So I'm going to do the update of this directly in GitHub. So I just click deploy again. Since CDKTF is idempotent, it'll only make the changes that are necessary. Okay, now that our deployment is complete, we will go back to our ECS cluster page. Okay. It'll take some time for the new image to replace the old, but it will be significantly faster than the initial deployment, because in the initial deployment, the entire application directory had to be installed, while here, all we're going to be doing is updating it. And for the purposes of this video, um, I created a ECS cluster with 2 instances so that this video would be significantly faster. Okay, there we go. Our deployment has already reached a steady state. Just reload the page. And you can see the items we have uploaded are still here. All right. So let's look at our task definition. We can see that the image that has been deployed is Nextcloud stable. And for our previous deployment, we can, which I should have demonstrated before. We're using Nextcloud latest. So we were able to update the image without losing any data. Now that we've completed our demonstration, I'm going to destroy the instance. So we do that simply by clicking on Run Workflow and changing this field from Deploy to Destroy. Click on Run Workflow. And our deployment will be destroyed in a couple of minutes. There you have it. We've deployed an instance with persistent storage to AWS using ECS containers and NFS. Now, there was something I forgot to say is the reason why I'm not using WordPress for this example is that I was unable to find any documentation anywhere, including official documentation for WordPress, of how to utilize persistent storage on their containers. So that is why I didn't move forward with that. I chose Nextcloud because on their container page on the Docker Hub, you can see they already have the documentation readily available on how to use get persistent data. While while the WordPress Docker official image has no such resource or documentation. I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. The link to the repository will be in the description. I hope you will join me for the next time where I will be deploying a set of GitHub runners to AWS. Thank you, and until the next time, I hope you like and subscribe. Take care. Bye.